Ronaldo's early struggles at Manchester United, a boy lost in a storm. Picture an 18-year-old stepping off a plane into Manchester's drizzle, his suitcase light, his English lighter. A boy from Madeira's sunlit cliffs now swallowed by a gray city that doesn't know his name. It's late summer 2003, and Cristiano Ronaldo has just signed with Manchester United for £12.24 million, a teenage record that hangs like a storm cloud over his narrow shoulders. Old Trafford looms ahead, a fortress of red dreams. But for Ronaldo, it's not yet a home. It's a labyrinth, cold and unforgiving, where every corner hides a challenge he's never faced. The Premier League isn't Sporting Lisbon's gentle rhythm. It's a beast of speed and muscle, a world that doesn't bend for flair or forgiveness. His tongue trips over English words he doesn't know. His body bends under tackles he can't dodge. And the fans, watch with eyes narrowed, whispering doubts about the skinny kid who dares to wear number 7. Too flashy, they call him. All tricks, no substance, as he dances with the ball too long, stumbles too often, and fights a battle he's not yet ready for. This isn't the Ronaldo of legend. Not yet. This is a boy adrift, caught between who he was and who he must become. His early months at United a crucible of struggle, doubt, and a fire that refuses to die. Imagine him that first week, alone in a rented flat near the training ground, the walls bare, the silence thick. He unpacks 2 shirts, a pair of pants, a photo of his mom, Maria, smiling back at him from the Madeira sunset. The air smells wrong, wet concrete and fried food. Not the salt and dust of home. He doesn't know how to cook, doesn't know where to buy bacalhau, or feel the warmth of a sibling chatter. I felt lost, he'd say later, his voice a quiet echo, like I didn't belong. English is a tangle. Teammates shout, pass, or move, and he nods blankly, guessing at meanings, his island accent a clumsy stutter that draws smirk from the locker room. Roy Keane, all steel and glare, doesn't bother hiding his impatience. Paul Scholes, sharp and silent, offers no hint. They talk fast, Ronaldo would recall, and I just smiled, hoping they'd stop. Off the pitch, he's a stranger in a strange land. Manchester's rain soaks his thin jacket, its grayness seeps into his bones, and the loneliness bites harder than cold. He calls home, the line crackling, Maria's voice faint but firm. You're strong, Cristiano, but strength feels far away when you're 18, a million miles from everything you know. Then there's the football, the Premier League, a roaring beast he's never met. Back at Sporting, he'd glide past defenders, his quick feet and clever flicks of dance on Lisbon's softer fields. Here it's war. His debut against Bolton Wanderers on August 16, 2003, is a taste. 30 minutes off the bench and a 4-0 win, a flicker of pace, a step over that teases but doesn't deliver. I thought I could play my way, he'd confess, but it wasn't the same. The pace is relentless, balls fly fast, bodies crash hard, and his wiry frame, still growing into itself, takes a beating. Defenders don't wait for tricks. They lunge, they shove, they bury him in the turf. I'd fall, he'd say, and they'd laugh. His first full start against Wolverhampton Wanderers in late August ends in a 1-0 loss. His dribbles cut short, his crosses wild, his shots swallowed by a wall of muscle. Too much flair, the pundits grumble, not enough fight. He hears it on the radio, in the stands, in the echo of his own head, and it stings like salt in a wound. The fans don't help. Old Trafford is a temple, but its congregation is skeptical. They've lost David Beckham, their golden boy, to Real Madrid, and now this kid, 12 million pounds of hype, struts in wearing number 7, a shirt that carries Best's magic, Cantona's steel, Beckham's grace. Who's this? They mutter, their voices sharp with doubt. Too young, too expensive, they say after Bolton, after Wolves, after every game where his step-overs dazzle but don't score. He's a show-off. One fan snaps in the pub. All tricks, no goals. Ronaldo feels their eyes, 67,000 pairs, piercing, judging, every time he steps on that hallowed grass. I knew they didn't trust me, he'd admit, and it hurt. He's not Beckham, not yet a star, not yet a man, and the weight of that number presses harder than any tackle. I wanted to prove it, he'd say, but I didn't know how. His style doesn't fit, not at first. In Madeira, in Lisbon, he'd learned to dance with the ball, to weave through gaps with a flick and a grin. The Premier League has no patience for dancing. It's physical, Sir Alex Ferguson tells him, voice stern. You've got to be tough. But toughness isn't his game. Not yet. Against Newcastle in September, he tries a double step over, a flair from his sporting days. Alan Shearer barrels through, flattening him, and the ball rolls away. Too flashy. The crowd groans, and Ferguson's glare from the sideline burns. I'd lose it, Ronaldo would recall, and they'd shout, everyone. His stats limp. 40 appearances in that 2003 to 2004 season. Just 6 goals, most from flashes, not finishes. I dribbled too much, he'd say, and it didn't work. His teammates see it. Keane growls when a pass doesn't come. Gary Neville rolls his eyes at another lost ball. They didn't say much, he'd note, but I felt it. The language barrier makes it worse. Training is chaos. Ferguson barks orders in thick Scottish brogue, drills shift fast, and Ronaldo lags. Mishearing, misunderstanding. I guess, he'd laugh later, half the time wrong. He tries, repeats yes and okay, like a broken record, but it's not enough. Off-field talks are torture. He sits silent in team meetings, nods at jokes he doesn't catch, his shy smile a mask for the panic underneath. I wanted to talk, he'd say, but the words wouldn't come. At home, he's alone. No friends yet, no family, just a TV he can't fully understand and a phone that rings too rarely. I'd call Mom, he'd confess and cry sometimes. Maria's voice steadies him. You'll learn, son, but learning feels like drowning, slow and cold. The physicality tests him hardest. He's 5 feet 11 inches now, taller than at Sporting, but still slight, 150 pounds of bone and will against men built like tanks. Against Arsenal in October, Patrick Vieira towers over him, a giant swatting a fly. Ronaldo's run ends in a heap, the ball stolen, the crowd jeering. They hit hard, he'd say, harder than I knew. His legs bruise, his shins ache, his confidence frays. I'd get up, he'd recall, but it hurt inside too. His flair, his gift, feels like a curse here. Every step over invites a crunch, every sprint a shove. I wasn't strong enough, he'd admit, not then. Ferguson sees it, tells him to bulk up to fight back, but the gym is new, the weight's foreign, and his body resists. I'd lift, he'd say, and feel weak. The doubters grow louder. After a 3-0 loss to Chelsea in November, his dribbles fizzle, his shots miss, and the press pounces. Overrated, one headline bites, a £12 million flop. Fans echo it, on the streets, in the stands. Beckham didn't dance like that. They sneer, he delivered. Ronaldo hears it all, reads it in papers he struggles to translate, feels it in the cold stares at Carrington. They thought I'd fail, he'd say, and I started to wonder. Nights stretch long. He lies awake, replaying every stumble, every jeer, the number 7 a shadow over his bed. I'd ask myself, he'd whisper, am I good enough? But beneath the struggle, something stirs. That fire, the one that burned through Madeira's dust, Lisbon's trials, flickers still. He trains late, alone, kicking against walls till his boots wear thin, his breath a fog in Manchester's chill. I wouldn't stop, he'd say, couldn't. Ferguson watches, sees the boy who won't quit, even when he falls. He had heart, the boss would note, raw, stubborn heart. A goal against Portsmouth in November, a free kick screamer, silences some. A header in the FA Cup final against Millwall in May 2004, a 3-0 win, hints at more. I felt it then, he'd say, a spark. The fans shift, grumbles soften to claps, a few chants rise. He's got something, one admits, maybe. Those months aren't triumph, they're survival. The language comes slow, words like team and run stick, but banter stays beyond him. The game toughens him, tackles teach him balance, falls teach him grit. I'd learn, he'd say, or I'd break. He doesn't break. By spring, his frame fills, muscle creeps in, his chest broadens, and his flair finds purpose. I'd adapt, he'd recall bit by bit. The jeers fade, not gone but quieter. Keane nods once, a rare sign. Scholes passes more, a silent trust. They saw me fight, he'd say, and that mattered. This isn't the Ronaldo who'd lift trophies or stun the world. Not yet. It's a boy, 18, lost in a storm of language, force, and doubt, clawing his way through. I was scared, he'd confess, but I wouldn't run. Every miss, every bruise, every silent night builds him. Not into a star, but a fighter. The Premier League doesn't bend for him. He bends for it, slowly, painfully, his tricks sharpening, his will hardening. I'd prove them wrong, he'd vow. Not today, but soon. Those early months at United aren't a crown. They're a forge, melting a kid from Madeira into something stronger, something the world would one day know. From the ashes of too flashy, a legend begins to rise, small, shaky, but alive.